This is changing by the week. I mean, AI is absolutely changing by the week. I'm not saying that you need to spend every single week what's the latest and greatest in AI, but you do need to make sure that you're staying ahead of what's happening and you're understanding how it's on. Because I really believe that AI in general is going to change how we operate as human beings, really.
This is the PMP Industry Insider Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome out to the episode of the PMP Industry Insider Podcast, where we look at what is changing in the pest and lawn industries, and we take you to the front lines to those that are driving those changes. I'm Donnie, Shelton, owner of Triangle Home Services. We have Triangle Pest as well as Triangle Lawn. And with me, back from his world travels, and I don't know what else, but with me is Mr. Dan Gordon. Dan, would you like to say good afternoon? Introduce yourself, introduce our sponsors, introduce our very special guest, maybe talk about our peer groups, and then get on to our topic, because I'm super excited about what we're going to talk about today.
Well, I'd be happy to.
Good.
Hello, everyone. Dan Gordon from PCO Bookkeepers and M&A Specialists. We do outsourced accounting, CFO work, and exit planning services. As far as our peer groups, we've got several of them going. Well, thanks to this podcast, a lot of people have reached out, and David Billingsley, our partner in the peer groups, has been running them and gotten a lot of positive feedback. So if you're interested, just let us know. That would be PMP Industry Insider or is that /
There you go.
/
Yes.
peer groups. And so we would also like you to consider supporting our sponsors. And the first one is Comarch by WorkWave. To learn more about marketing, that would be comarch.com. By the way, I didn't say that in any particular order, but Pestsure, who Todd Burke has been on the show plenty of times, and he's a terrific supporter of ours. If you're interested in industry specific for the pest control industry insurance, get with them. That's pestsure.com. And today, our very special guests are Donnie and I. So,
oh boy, here we go.
Yep. We're going to talk about Donnie's favorite topic.
Yes, we are.
Even he likes it even more than politics. We're going to be talking about SearchGPT, revolutionizing search for business. What you need to know. How's that?
Yes, that's perfect. You did a good job.
All right.
You did a good job.
Thanks, man.
Okay, so for our listeners, this literally just dropped last week, and so we thought we'd do an episode. And there's a couple of things that I need to talk about before we get into this. So the first thing is that, and this is by no means a victory lap at all, but if you've listened to some of our previous episodes on AI and kind of where it's going, Dan and I actually talked about this coming. And one of the things that we talked about is that, we talked about how ChatGPT, when it turns to search, how it's going to be a real big player and a real big change in how search is done. And, obviously what would happen with Google from that. Well, that has transpired. It is what they consider to be in kind of a sandbox right now, but we're going to talk about that, which is SearchGPT, which is different than ChatGPT. So we're going to talk about that announcement. We're going to talk a little bit about how it works. We're going to talk about what the ramifications are, and most importantly, what you can do to get prepped for this big change, because I do think this is going to be a massive change in search. I don't think this is going to be a little toy that's going to get played with. I think it's strategic, and I think it's going to be a game changer when it comes to how we market our businesses and how we set up for really the next generation of how do you get your business listed online and how you're found by our customers. The second thing that I need to talk about before we get into this episode is what I would call the GPT debacle. If you've listened to previous episodes on AI, I may, and I say may, okay, so I did several times I would say generative predictive text, and that is absolutely incorrect. And one of our astute listeners wrote in and said, Donnie, stop saying that. And he was absolutely correct. I started laughing when I read it because I was like, sometimes I have a tendency to say what something does versus actually what the real name is. The correct name is generative pre-trained transformer. That is the real name. And I should have said that. And but when you're using ChatGPT, it's absolutely, you look at how the algorithm work, it's
So a
predictive.
call out to Todd Lisi from Adams Pest Control in
Hey,
Minnesota for sending in uh, that
hey, and
comment.
by the way, for
Who
that listener, we had a very big debate before we started recording. And I said, I am not going to say who it is. And Dan's like, well, I'm going to. I'm like, fine, you knock yourself out. But
Todd,
no,
we appreciate your patronage or your listening to our fact checking us each week
yes,
because that's the country needs
no,
a little bit more
but
fact checking.
hey, in all truth, he was 100% correct. And again, for all intents and purposes, when you're looking at Chat GPT, that's what it is doing, is predicting what the next word or letter or whatever should be. But he, the real name is generative pre-trained transformer. So I'm always amazed at like people that listen and really some of the crap that comes out of my mouth, and I don't realize until someone says, "Hey, what did you mean when you said that?" And I was like, "Oh, did I say that?"
I mean, I feel that way even when we're not podcasting,
There you go. Exactly. All righty. So let's get into Search GPT. And look, I'm going to tell you right now, this is a little early. This just got announced last week. And according to OpenAI, this is considered to be in prototype status. So what that means is that you can't just go and run Search GPT right now. You have to have a special invitation. There's a wait list. And if you want to get on the wait list, you just go to openai.com and then look for Search GPT, and you can sign up to get on the wait list. But nonetheless, it was announced last week that they're going to be doing Search GPT now, and it's completely different. It works completely different than Google. And I actually believe that if you look at how it works, I think it's quite a bit smarter. One, when you think about fundamentally, when you search on Google, you're going to put in a query, and you almost have to speak Googleese. You know what I mean? Like you have to know. Like I remember back. Do you remember back when search engines first came out? And I remember my mom trying to search, and she was basically typing in um, like her question, like in natural language, right?
right.
I'm like, Mom, no, it didn't work that way. No, you got to use search terms. And so basically you would have to train everyone how to speak to a search engine so it would understand exactly what what you're trying to ask for. Well, okay, so fast forward, and of course Google just returns back pages with links, and it returns kind of snippets of content, and then it's your job to sift through those links and to sift through all those different results and determine if what you're looking for is actually in there. Search GPT.
So just to interrupt you, as I always do, um,
What? Yes.
I probably the past 3 or 4 weeks I've noticed I subscribe to Gemini because I use Gemini.
Mm-hmm.
And when I do a search on my computer, which, the Gemini's, my password's all in there and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
When I do a search on Google, it gives me an AI. It writes a paragraph about whatever I'm
Mm-hmm.
searching and then just gives me the normal search.
Yep. Yep.
So Search GPT, is that a Google product or is it Microsoft
No,
from
it's an open AI product,
or
and
OpenAI, which is
yeah.
Microsoft's
Well,
investment
they
too?
are owned. Yes, they are. I mean, not completely owned by Microsoft, but they have a massive stake in OpenAI. And so, yes, to answer your question, it definitely works differently than what you're seeing on Gemini right now. But nonetheless, when I say I think it works better and it works smarter, is that it's actually going to it's going to level up. It's almost like if you or I are talking, and I'm like, "Hey Dan, what concerts are coming in?" I don't know. Are you the Florida man this week? Where are you at?
No, I'm in New Jersey.
Okay, so he's in Jersey. So I'm like, okay, what's concerts are coming to, I don't know, to your hometown over the next weekend. And so if I were talking to you that, you would go online and you would search, and then you would come up with a list, and you would tell me what they are. Google, of course, would give you links, and then links to pages that would have that information. Search GPT is going to go through all that for you, and it's going to give you a nice listing. And what I love about it is it gives you links. Instead of the the big title being, and you're going to have to see a visual in this. Like you need to go to OpenAI's website to just see how it works. Again, you can't actually search with it quite yet, unless you're one of those rare few journalists or whatever that's gotten special access to test a prototype. But it tells you what it thinks is going to be the answer to your question in natural language, and then it gives you an attribution link. And so when I say, I think, one of the things you have to think about, what's the driver? Is this going to stick or not? Does it really help people, and is it easy to use? And I think the fact that it sits on top, it's like almost like another layer up, and it's all natural language. I think it's going to be a massive competitor to Google. I don't think this is going to
But
be.
when people go to search, their search page is Google. Is this going to be on Bing? Like, or, so I don't know too many people who use Bing, but
I don't either. But I do know that if most people are like me, which means I'm lazy and I want stuff fast and I don't want to have to do too much digging. I think, SearchGPT, it's in my mind, it has the real potential of supplanting Google. Now, there are a lot of things that have, I mean, this is not going to be something that's going to happen by the end of the year, right? I think over a period of like 3 to 4 years, as this gets more and more integrated with natural language processing, meaning like, okay, already think about how ChatGPT works and how effective it is. If, like, say, for example, it could do voice, you can ask it questions, right? There's things that you can do that it's going to, I mean, and most of the time, now it's not perfect. Most of the time, it's pretty spot on. Every now and then, it has a harebrained idea, right? There's some funny things out there, websites you can look at where they come back with some, and I say they, I'm talking about, these AI tools, they come back with some weird stuff. Like one of them was when Google tried doing this earlier, the first time, when they first started putting AI on top of their search engine, it was coming back with some crazy stuff like telling people to put glue on their pizzas and those types of things. And so they've really been struggling with it. They have not figured that out quite yet. But this, OpenAI, their models are really tight and they're very good. And so far, they have proven to be, in my opinion, superior to what Google has been able. I mean, remember when? I mean, this just happened like 2 months ago, when they remember what Gemini used to be barred or whatever, and then they launched Gemini. And there was this huge fallout because it had all this bias in it. It was saying some racist
Mhm.
stuff, and they had this big blow up at Google, and they're going to redo all their. And the other thing that's been happening, and I don't think a lot of people know this, is that OpenAI has been recruiting a ton of Google engineers. So, essentially what they're trying to do is they're trying to take their AI model and stick it on top of, or basically train it how to search really, really well. And the way that it returns back information in terms of natural language, I think it has the potential of being a real competitor to Google. And so it's pretty exciting in my mind. I mean, and if you need to go, we're gonna put some links up on this show, the show notes, that I'm gonna share some articles where um, what actually shows what this looks like, because you can do image searching, you can do content searching, and you can have it return back different. I mean, it's fundamentally different, and in my mind, it's a lot smarter than Google. Now, to your point, Dan, this is not going to replace Google anytime soon. They have a pretty large moat, and it's probably going to take 2 to 3 years. But I think Chat
But doesn't
GPT,
Google improve theirs on the way? And is it,
they will.
Google's just going to fall over? I don't think so.
I don't think they're going to fall over, but I think we're going to have a real competitor to Google now.
Mhm.
And I think some things that we need to think about as business owners, and I'm going to get into that a little bit later on, is is that we got to spread out just a bit here. I mean, okay, so if Microsoft owns a vast majority, and I don't think they own 50%. I think it's like 40. I don't remember what it is. I could look it up real quick, um, but they own a pretty massive stake in OpenAI. I would imagine that Bing and, like, how, I mean, they're going to be a real competitor to Google. I don't think Google's going to wield the big stick
But think
in five
about when
years.
in your Comarch days, right? So if I
hmm
were going to spend a sum of money, say $10,000 on search, um, wouldn't 90 or 95% of it go to
Oh,
Google and the other
yeah.
5 or 10% to Bing? Like,
Yeah.
how do they overcome that? It's
Here's the thing. You know, OpenAI wasn't the first one out with AI. Remember? Facebook and Google were. Facebook and Google were like, they came out like 2 years before OpenAI even hit the scene. But the problem is that their models were just all over the place. They came back with such, bad information and,
But so is it really AI? I mean, it's
well, the thing of it is like, and then it got on Facebook, and remember Facebook completely shut it down because of some of I mean, it was racist, like it was
yeah,
off the rails, right? And so
yeah.
I don't think just because it's Google, like I actually think they're behind in the AI race. I don't think that they're nowhere near where OpenAI is, and I don't think they're going to get there anytime soon. I mean, think about it. When you got the CEO of Google apologizing and pulling a lot off of Gemini, remember this was 2 months ago when they had that big
Mhm.
blow up. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. So
So if I'm a pest or lawn care company and I'm buying paid ads, am I reallocating more of it
not yet.
to
Yeah,
Bing?
not no,
Okay.
not yet, not yet. But I do think that you need to start thinking about it, and I do, and
Mm.
I mean, I absolutely think that you need to. And we're going to get into what to do, but I think you absolutely need to start thinking about how do I optimize for being right now. Now, of course, remember, search is going to fundamentally change, and there are some small things that you can do right now, but the issue is this: is that it's so new and it's so early, not a lot of people know, right? Not a lot of people know how to game it. And I mean, I've got some researched out things that you can do right now, but I'm telling you, listen, the reason that we're talking about this on this podcast is that in business, and this is just a fundamental principle, you make money on being the front side of, being on the front side of change. And I feel strongly, I feel very strongly that we, meaning everyone that's listening to this podcast and in our industry, I think we're on the front side of a major shift with AI. We're already seeing it. And I think naturally the next thing that's going to happen is search. And that plays a big part in everyone. If you're listening to this podcast right now, you know for a fact that search plays a big part of your business. If you're not
So let's talk
using,
about an imaginary business model, right? So
okay,
when I search for triangle pest control, whatever I'm going to search for, so I'm going to, or better yet, pest control companies in Raleigh. So triangle is going to come up in the pay per click. And maybe if I search the right term, it's going to show up in the organic area.
mm-hmm.
And if I search my Gemini or my search GPT, what is going to come up that I click on that I can pay Google or pay Microsoft to
So
do?
it's interesting you asked that question. Um, okay, so first of all, there are other AI powered search engines out there right now. That's all they do. One of them is called Perplexity. I will link this in the show notes. And Perplexity is different. It almost works like the OpenAI one, but it's not as it's not as good. And what I mean by that is it's more generic, right? And so I started doing some searches. I did exactly what you just said. I searched best pest control company in Raleigh, best, obviously that's where I'm at. Uh, and I'm gonna say it, I'm like number 4, number 5, right? And what I found is that it went right to the big box names first. Who I'm talking about when I say big box. Went to the
Mhm.
big box
But are they
names
paying
first.
for it?
No, they're not. This is what AI is assuming is what most people are looking for. Now, there are differences between Perplexity and Search GPT that I'm going to get into that I think will make that a little different. Then it went to big box websites like Angie's List, and then it kind of ranked off of those. So that's going to get interesting because you're going to have to it's almost like you're going to have to create this aura that everyone thinks you're hot stuff, right? You just can't pay to get there. I mean, I'm sure there will be a way to monetize that. I am certainly not going to sit here and pontificate on how they're going to do that because I have no idea. But I will tell you, Perplexity, as generic as it is, has all kinds of lawsuits on it right now because there's a ton of publishers that are ticked off at them because they feel like they're getting ripped off, right? That Perplexity is ripping off their content and producing it back, and no one's paying for it. And so, but how that's going to be
But if
different,
I'm one of the big guys, call it what it is,
call it what it is.
Orkin,
It's
Terminex,
yeah,
because there's so much stuff out there. I am getting it for free.
right.
to the detriment of all of the mom and pops.
That's correct. I'm sure there's going to be some tweaking, right? I mean, I'm just telling you, this was Perplexity. This was not SearchGPT. Again, I will repeat what I said at the beginning of this podcast. I was not one of the fortunate ones. That I'm sure at OpenAI could care less who Donnie Shelton is. I certainly did not get the invite for the early access for the for the model, but nonetheless, I think SearchGPT is going to be different from Perplexity in the sense of that it's going to understand you personally. Like it's going to know what your behavior is. It's going to know what your preferences are. If you're a local business kind of guy, if you're like a big box brand kind of guy, and it's going to personalize those search results, probably even more so than Google, because it's going to know you at a much deeper level. And so what that's going to do is it's going to make that tool super easy for end users to use because the results are going to be more engaging and they're going to be more tailored towards them. And the other thing is again, going back to what we talked about earlier, is this whole conversational interaction. You don't have to speak, search and ease, right? You can just say what you're thinking. Like you could say, what's the best pest control company? It's going to go out and find it for you. So I just feel like, yes, you're right. We're not going to get, this is not going to, knock Google off the top anytime soon. But at the same time, it absolutely is a real threat. And I feel like, considering that OpenAI is, and this is my opinion, of course, is so far ahead of Google and so far ahead of Gemini right now, and what they've done. I mean, think about how big OpenAI has gotten in just the last 2 years. Think about it. Just in the last 2 years. I mean, it's been pretty impressive. So nonetheless,
So let's say you're using your, I mean, maybe I'm not the average crowd, but I don't do a lot of search on my phone. I talk to my phone. Hey Siri, tell me where this is. Tell me, hey Siri. So where's Siri going to take it?
well, I don't. I mean, I think Siri right now. You know what the back end's going to be of Siri, right?
Hmm?
Going to be. It's going to be Apple Intelligence. Do you know what Apple
Which is their
Intelligence?
AI.
Which is OpenAI. That's exactly
Okay.
right. That's
Okay.
exactly right. So again, the reason that we're talking about it now, and the reason I want to do an episode on it now, is that I think now is the perfect time to start preparing, because you've got at least a good year before this is, in my mind, it's going to really hit mainstream. Maybe sooner. I don't think OpenAI is going to be able to get it out and actually start making consumers change in that amount of time. They may. I'm not sure. But nonetheless, the reason I want to talk about it now is because, hey, there are tangible things that you can do as a business owner right now that as this comes online, your business is going to naturally stand out and you'll be prepped for that. As the change starts coming, your website will already be ready to go. You already be doing the things that I feel like AI is going to be looking for. I mean, listen, there's nothing that we can do. Like in the case of Perplexity, I'm never going to be Orkin or Terminex in my lifetime. Not going to happen, right?
Mhm.
I'm just not going to scale to
As
that
much as
size.
you try.
As much as I try, it's not going to happen. But there are some specific things that we're going to do, and I'm going to put this list up on the show notes. But I came up with just kind of, again, this is research that we've been doing since it came out. I have been fascinated with this because I kind of figured this is where it was going. I did not anticipate it coming this fast. There had been people talking about, ChatGPT eventually, OpenAI is going to come out with a search product and platform, but I expected that like maybe a year or two from now. I did not expect him to release it so soon. So it's kind of nice. But nonetheless, let's start. First, let's come up with this list of how you prepare. Unless you want to talk, unless you got another question before
Nope.
we get
Nope.
going. Okay.
Push right in.
So option one is optimize content for NLP, which is natural language processing. So what that means is that this is, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm going to say this. What that means is this: take your content on your website, run it through AI, and ask it how clear it is, how conversational it is, and make sure that and ask it if it naturally aligns with how people speak and ask questions. Actually leverage AI to make your content more appealing to AI. All right. That's, if anything you take out of this podcast, that is probably the number one thing.
That's
is
interesting.
You need to understand that if you optimize content for NLP, AI is going to naturally believe that your site is more valuable. So clear conversational language.
I will do that after this podcast. Just to
Clear conversational language that aligns with how people naturally speak and ask questions. Now, I'm not telling you to have AI create all your content. What I'm telling you to do is have AI judge your content, because I think I really do think if you have AI generate all your content, I don't know that if you ever
Mm.
read something from AI, it just
Yeah.
doesn't have. But AI is great for kind of cleaning up
No, it
your
gets
own
you like
content.
80% of the way
Right.
there.
I use
I
it to
do a
kind
lot
of
of
clean.
writing and I use a lot of AI
Well,
to
I
do it.
write it and then I use AI to clean it up, right? To make it clear. Because
I use
sometimes I
AI to
repeat
write it and
myself.
then I clean it up.
It's too bad we can't. Too bad we can't have AI clean up our conversations on the podcast. But
I know.
nonetheless, right? So it gets rid of like repetition, any logical fallacies, which we never have those. But anyway, point
Right.
I'm making is optimize your content for NLP. Use AI to help you get that website there. The second thing is, and this is probably this is this is Google has already started this shift already. And if you're not doing this, it's something to really think about. And that is focus on user intent, meaning that I remember back in the day when we would write sites, and I did this in for Triangle. I understood that there were keywords that I had to have, and I had to have a lot of them, and I had to have inbound links to them. And if I wanted to rank for, exterminator, or if I wanted to rank for lawn, I would say something like, Dan is a great lawn care provider in Raleigh, and he does lawns in Raleigh, and he does spend so much time taking care of my plants in Raleigh. Like all my content was
Just stuffing the
written.
words.
Yeah, it
Yep.
was written for. It was basically written for search engines, right? That's a big shift now. We have to start thinking about focusing on user intent, meaning that you want to make sure that you clearly state, like just like you and I were talking, here's the problem and here's the solution, and that it's very, very targeted to who you're trying to go after. It cannot be kind of this generic content that's just like, yeah, if you have a lawn, like you want to, because again, remember, it's natural language processing, and it's also going to be very specific and very tailored to the person that's actually searching. And so focusing on user intent is going to be number two. So number one is optimize for NLP. Number two is focusing on intent. Number three is structured markup or structured data markup, which basically means it's a scheme of what, and this is, if you're listening to this and you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. Your website company does. They absolutely use it. It's one of the ways that you can give, like, this is how my website's structured, and here's what the content is on this page. It helps search engines better understand content and context. And that's a really important point when it comes to AI, because AI cares a lot more about not a more, but it cares more, just as much about context as it does content. So you want to make sure that that your structured data is marked up really, really well. You can just talk to your website company about that. Making sure that it's indexed and presented in search results. And so what that means is that before in structured data, you would put keywords in there. You would put like just little snippets of, like, it would not be coherent at all. With the new model, I think one of the things that we really want to start focusing on is user intent in that structured data, because that's what's going to be read by AI. So number four, which I thought was interesting. This is one I found in my research. It turns out that conversational AI integration is a factor for a lot of these AI driven search engines. So, what that means is if you don't have a conversational AI chatbot on your website, probably now is a good time to start researching some of that. You know what I mean? That essentially you want to make it so that if someone comes to your site, that you can provide immediate and good responses to that user, regardless whether you're
So
open or
how,
not.
so all right. So I get in the old days, I say, hey, show me Raleigh pest control. You have on your website Raleigh pest control. I pick out those words, so then I show that link. But now you're talking about um, videos. You're talking about um, chat bots that haven't even said anything yet. How does, if I say Raleigh pest control, how does it go in and grab information from a a YouTube video that you have embedded or whatever, or that a chat bot that just says, I'm Dan, can I help you?
I don't think it. I think fundamentally AI is not going to work that way. Um,
Mhm.
Okay, so my age is starting to show now. I can't remember if I did this on this podcast or if I did it in another presentation. We talked about machine learning on this podcast, correct?
Yep.
Okay, and I described how machine learning works. Like at the
Yep.
end of the day, fundamentally, what AI is doing is it's looking for patterns. Whereas like for you and I, we can look out in a parking lot and we can say there might be a truck out there, there might be in the case of Dan, there might be a Bentley, or maybe 5 or 6, I'm not sure, but we would all
Right.
say,
Absolutely.
the
Seven or
pattern
eight.
is that they're cars, right? And so that's the pattern. Whereas a human can pick up, maybe 100 or 2 patterns. AI can do millions of patterns. And so I don't think keywords is really going to be what's going
So,
to
but one of the things that you said that was interesting in, I guess, the machine learning was when AI said, when you say what's 2 plus 2, it says 4, but it's not because it did a math equation. It's because it's seen that so many times that that's the answer.
correct. Yep, that is correct. And that's changing, right? From what I understand, that problem has been solved, but I don't want to talk too much about it because I haven't done a ton of research on it. And
Okay.
I don't want to get another. I don't want to get another. I don't want to get
You
another
don't want
letter.
Todd to reach
Yeah,
out and
so I'm not far enough along on that because I have not
okay.
circled back on. To
By the
answer your
way, Todd,
question,
if you've done a bunch of research, we'd love to hear it.
yeah, we'll bring it on. We'll bring it on. But I have not gone back to that. Okay, so I can tell you that yes, that's the way it used to work. From what I understand, I think they've solved that now, but I'm not certain. So,
Mhm.
but yes, to answer your question, that's exactly how it worked. But nonetheless, bringing back to your original question, yes, you have videos, and yes, you have content, and yes, you have all these other things that are happening. But at the end of the day, it's like, what's the pattern? When someone says, "I've got mice, I've got a brown lawn," or whatever, what's the pattern that gets them to where they're trying to go? And what's the most common pattern that they're going to want to take? And that's really what they're going to be looking for. And so that's why it's so important to optimize your content for NLP. That's why it's so important to focus on user intent because it's all about the pattern now. Like, and I mean, if you think about it, that's how humans work, right? I mean, it's like,
Mhm.
okay, I go to the well, I drink water. Okay, that's the pattern, right? I mean, it's so, okay, so going back, structure or optimize for NLP, focus on user intent, structure data markup, and then we talked about integrating some sort of conversational AI chatbot onto your site. Now, I'm not telling you to go out and go find the quickest thing that you can find. I mean, you got plenty of time to get this done, but it should be part of your plan when I'm just, we all are going through and upgrading our sites and those types of things. This needs to be on that list. Next thing is, and this is no different than typical search, which is content quality and relevance, right? So meaning that, making sure that your content is, and this is where I get into don't keyword stuff. Don't have AI write all of your content, meaning that you don't want your content to be boilerplate generic crap that no one really wants to read. And you also don't want it to be keyword stuff because again, it's not quality. It's not going to be something that people are going to want to read. And it's not truly relevant to a very specific, search or something that someone's looking for. So you want to make sure that don't high pass your content, don't offload it to AI, and make sure that I'm not telling you need to write 100 pages, but I do
No,
think
but keyword stuffing has been
it's been
gone for
gone.
a while. Yeah, you
And it
don't
still happens though. I mean, it still
really.
happens. Yeah, it does. I
Mhm.
mean, of course, you have to be careful because, we did the whole panda thing and back in the day when they were on this big spam vendetta, right? And they're going after everyone. That has since come back a little bit, but it still happens. I mean, there's still little signals that you can do here and there. But point being is that you want the content to be about user intent. It's kind of saying the same thing, but you want to make sure that it is set up in a way or your content is written in a way that it's quality and it's something that people want to read. Okay. Next thing is, and this is kind of going back to you, Dan. You said I don't really type on my phone a whole lot. I use mobile, I use voice search. There's
Mhm.
actually ways that you can optimize your website for mobile devices and for voice search, meaning that you want stuff to load fast. You want it to be mobile friendly design that people can see. Again, this is kind of boilerplate stuff. I mean, that's not anything groundbreaking here, making it mobile friendly. But you also want to make it so that the content is super fast because, again, if you're doing mobile and voice search, you're going to want to get answers super fast. You're not going to want some complex, graphic heavy website, right? I'm not telling you it should look like Google where there's no images, but it needs to be easily accessible on smaller screens and it needs to load fast. That's going to play a big part. And by the way, this already is a factor in the current Google search algorithm anyway. So you're probably already doing this, but again, it's not anything that, that you can't double check to make sure it's good to go. And then the last two things that I'm going to put it up on the list, but it's just making sure. I mean, again, this is changing by the week. I mean, AI is absolutely changing by the week. I'm not saying that you need to spend every single week, what's the latest and greatest in AI, but you do need to make sure that you're staying ahead of what's happening and you're understanding how it's on. Because I really believe that AI in general is going to change how we interact with technology, and it's going to change how we operate as human beings, really. I mean, how we find information, how we find companies. And so I think putting your head in the sand is not a good strategy. And I think it's going to be a good way to get left in the dust. And of course, as part of that, just making sure that you're, as you make small changes and as changes happen in the marketplace, that you, like anything, you measure what's going on. That's kind of my last piece there, is just making sure that you monitor changes in search patterns and what users do. That way you can.
So when little kids come into the first grade, they're not going to be learning their ABCs and the numbers, and they're
No.
just going to learn how to ask the
Well, I mean,
computer.
it's already.
The problem is if you don't have a basis for the learning, how do you ask the questions, right?
Well, I will
If I
tell
don't
you,
know that 2 and 2 equals 4, then
me and my son was driving somewhere and I was asking him a question about something. He said, "Well, how's that working?" I'm like, "I don't know." I'm like, "Look it up." And I looked down. I'm not telling him driving. I'm not going to say that, but I looked down. He wasn't on Google.
what was he doing?
He was using AI.
Really?
He was using OpenAI's app. He sure was. And I
How
mean,
old is he?
he's 15. Well, he's turning
Okay.
15 on Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's what he's using. So,
Mhm.
so anyway, again, just a big look. This podcast, we are not solving the world's problems here. I just wanted to get this out to our listeners because I do think if you've not taken a look at SearchGPT, if you're not aware of it, now's the time to start looking because, again, it's nothing new. Again, there are already search AI generated search engines out there. You can look at Perplexity if you want to see something right now. Again, I'll link it on the show notes. But I do think you need to start looking at this and you need to start thinking about how to position your business because truly, 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 I believe if you get in front of this now, it's going to be a massive benefit for your business because once everyone figures it out, right? I mean, it's just like what happened with Yellow Pages, just like what happened with, Google search. I think this is going to be the next crack, right? That we can we can expose for now until everyone else figures it out. And so
How
just
many
being
years
ahead
do
of
we
them.
have till it just
I think probably 5, maybe. This runs pretty fast. I mean, this
okay?
is a lot faster than, um,
Like Yellow Pages were
yeah,
75 years.
it was,
Google
and
search was 10
15.
years,
Yeah, 10,
maybe.
15. I
Yeah.
think you got maybe 5. I don't know that for certain, but if,
Yeah, no, it's
at the
good.
speed
Yes.
it's going, I'd say that's about what it's going to be. So,
Mhm.
all right,
Yeah,
Dan, I did a lot of talking on that. Any
you certainly did.
questions? Anything to add?
No, I think it's a very interesting topic. And as you do research, and the interesting thing about, Donnie's running a pest and lawn company. And so he's constantly doing this research. But in case you didn't know, he's got a computer science background. So that's how he knows all of this stuff, or otherwise I'd call him out in BS. But
No, it's
he's
probably
not
all
he's
still
not full
BS,
of it.
huh? Yeah.
He's the real deal. So not that
Well,
I'm
great.
sucking up to him.
No, not at all. Not at all. Well, listen, as a reminder, as always, if you enjoy the show, we appreciate any ratings and reviews that you can get and even call outs. I appreciate those as well. We always trying to get better.
Thanks,
If
Todd.
you're not following us on Spotify or Apple, however it is you listen to podcasts, we appreciate you following us on that. And just a reminder that all the resources and topics, especially some of these links in this little checklist that we put together of how you compare now, will all be available on the podcast website. Just go over to pmpindustryinsider.com. Just take a look under show notes. And if you got any complaints, concerns, or just general complaining in general, we ask you pass that on to Dan. And with that, we're going to sign off. We'll see you next time. Take care now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See ya.